for spine-chilling true tales of sinister trespassers. Exposed horrors in haunted places, Linda's heart raced as she flipped through the pages of a tabloid that blared stories about chilling trespassers in seemingly ordinary homes. The ink seemed to blur as unsettling images danced before her eyes, stirring her anxiety. Just weeks after her chaotic divorce, she was determined to create a safe haven for her 2 kids in the snug suburb of Maplewood. But lately, the shadows at night had grown darker, and her children voiced their fears about them, the puzzling figures that flickered and darted across their walls. She brushed their worries aside, attributing them to the wild imagination of kids suffering through a tumultuous transition. Little did she know, the threats had only begun as another grueling shift at the diner wore on. Adrenaline kept her feet moving, but by the time she returned home, exhaustion clawed at her. The front door gaped open. It felt like a chill seeped into her bones. Photos, once proudly displayed, were scattered and rearranged, a strange detail that sent prickles of unnerving dread rippling through her. Shadows loomed larger, and the weight of unshakable fear settled in her chest as she carefully stepped over the threshold, every fiber of her being screaming for her children's safety. Muffled whispers floated through Maplewood, soft yet sinister, as if everyone shared secrets about the peculiar man who had just moved 2 doors down. He was seen, but he never lingered. Every person Linda encountered wore expressions muddled with concern, but nobody dared speak his name. The atmosphere felt thicker after dark, less welcoming. The scuttles against the walls tickled her spine, goosebumps prickling at her skin. Could it be her nerves conjuring shadows? Or was there truly something lurking, waiting to greet her family with malice? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined to confront the shadows that haunted her family, she marched toward the unknown man's door. Dread slithered around her thoughts, each creak of the floor amplifying the peculiar ambience of the night, her timid heart pounding. A part of her yearned to turn back, but she felt there was no retreat. The tales of the last family who had faced danger swirled in her mind. Could it be the ghost stories woven into the fabric of Maplewood folklore? Stories of restless spirits drawn to those vulnerable and alone. They haunted her as she inched closer. With a chill in her spine, Linda finally saw him. Shadows stretched long and twisted around him, putting a sinister edge to his charming smile. Each word exchanged was laced with tension, back and forth teasing from both sides, like a cosmic joke hovered in the air. Just as the dark energy seemed to climax, her heart dropped. Frozen in terror, the shrill scream of one of her children sliced through the night, cutting through the suspense like a knife. Panic surged, ripping her thoughts away as she sprinted towards home, questions spinning in her mind. What unspeakable horror had taken refuge within her once hallowed walls? Would she ever reclaim its safety, or had she inadvertently opened the door to a new realm of terror? Linda flew through the front door, her breath hitching as she called out for her children. The house was eerily silent, and the shadows hung like a deceptive curtain around her. Sarah, Tommy. Each syllable echoed against the stark walls, producing an unsettling stillness. Her heart drummed in her ears, a relentless reminder of the scream that had sent her racing home. The dim light from the kitchen flickered, creating an illusion of movement that made every creak of the house sound like something was waiting just out of sight. With each step into the living room, her dread deepened. The furniture felt alien, as if it were rearranged by a ghostly hand. Pictures hung crookedly, the faces of her children posed in happier times distorted by the gloom. She rushed toward the hall, heart pounding, her hands trembling as she reached for the light switch. The fluorescent bulbs buzzed to life, illuminating the space in harsh brightness. Nothing. Everything appeared untouched. Her pulse raced, matching the frantic pounding in her chest. Sarah, Tommy. The fear clawed at her throat, making it hard to breathe. Were they hiding? Or had something worse happened? As she bolted down the hallway, the stench of something rancid hit her. It snaked through her nostrils and twisted her stomach. She winced, backing up against the wall as her eyes scoured the crevices, desperately searching for her kids. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of dread. Then, from the bedroom, came the softest sound, a whimper. It was muffled, but from the unmistakable timbre of one of her children. Linda sprinted toward the door, her breath catching in her throat. When she flung it open, it creaked ominously, announcing her entry in a way that made the hair on her arms stand on end. Sarah and Tommy huddled together, eyes wide, tears streaking down their faces. Linda's heart shattered at the sight. What happened? What's wrong? She knelt beside them, her voice thick with urgency. "Mommy," Sarah sobbed, clutching her brother tightly. "He came in, the man, he whispered to us." Linda's skin prickled at the words. The man. She already knew who they were talking about. What did he say? Tommy's small voice trembled as he spoke. "He said we should come outside, play with him in the dark." "I didn't want to go." Panic and disbelief coursed through Linda. Had the stranger approached them? Had he been lurking so close? "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." But her confidence felt as wavering as the dying light outside. The windows rattled suddenly as harsh winds whipped through the trees, knocking against the glass. Linda jumped, her stomach twisting with instinctive fear. "Stay in here. I'll check the back door," she commanded, though a part of her was crumbling inside. The air felt charged, the feeling of being watched crawling over her skin. As she turned to leave the room, Sarah's plea held her in place. "Mommy, don't leave us alone." The door creaked behind her. In an instant, Linda felt the shift in the air, like an unseen presence cloaked in darkness was pushing inside the very walls of the house. "No, no, no," she muttered, backing towards the window, dread unfurling like a dark cloud in her mind as she glanced back at her children, ready to assure them of their safety one more time. She noticed a shadow lingering just outside the doorframe, unnaturally still, its shape elongated against the wall. Linda's breath hitched again, her voice barely a whisper as fear caked in her throat. "Get behind me," but the door swung open with a slow, deliberate creak, revealing a figure bathed in shadows, a sinister smile stretching across his face. "Ready to play?" The children shrieked, and in that moment, Linda knew terror would mark their home forever. What had she unleashed in her desperate search for safety? With the door open wide, the darkness seeped in like an unwelcome guest. What had come for them now? The figure stood there, a monstrous silhouette with a smirk that sent shivers racing down Linda's spine. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering like taunting spirits urging him closer. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but the floor beneath her feet felt glued to the ground. "Mommy!" Sarah's voice shattered the air, a piercing cry laced with terror. "Stay behind me," Linda commanded, trying to sound fierce, but doubt gnawed at her heart. She could feel the darkness wrapping around them, thick and suffocating, as if it were trying to pull her in. The man took a slow step forward. His eyes gleamed, predatory and hungry. "Children shouldn't hide away from their friends," he crooned, his tone dripping with mockery. Linda's hands tingled, tightening into fists. "Get out," she shouted, trying to project strength. The room felt smaller, the walls creeping inwards, suffocating. "Are you sure you want me to leave?" "I just came to invite them to play." His voice slithered into her mind, filling her with images of those sunless woods outside, forgotten figures lurking among the trees, waiting, beckoning. "Go, now," she yelled, stepping closer, blocking the doorway. She couldn't let him reach her children, not after all the fear they had experienced. But every muscle in her body felt heavy, like the air itself was thickening, painfully slow. "Why not let me in?" he said, tilting his head, that ghastly smile unmoving. "I promise I won't bite." His laughter slithered into her ears, echoing mirthlessly. It stirred something within her, a primal terror that whispered of impending doom. "Don't you dare touch them," she screamed, but inside, her resolve rippled like a fading shadow. Doubt gnawed at her. Was this the end? "Mommy, I'm scared," Tommy whimpered, his small body trembling behind her. "Close your eyes," Linda ordered, her voice trembling as she ushered them further into the room. She knew the moment the children did as she said. Her heart constricted with a protective instinct. "Just stay quiet." The man chuckled again, a haunting sound that filled the empty corners of the room with dread. "Do you think this will help?" "You're only delaying the game." Sinking dread clawed inside her chest as she thoughtfully considered the shadows swirling in the corners. She darted a glance at the window. The thick glass pane felt like the only barrier separating them from him. What would happen if he forced his way in? "Let us see how far your little mommy can protect you." As he spoke, the air in the room shifted. It grew colder, turning chillier with each passing moment. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the tension. A window shattered somewhere in the house. Linda's heart dropped like a stone. How many more openings did their sinister guest have? "Stay here," she whispered urgently, preparing to face whatever chaos lurked outside. As she headed toward the noise, she glanced back at her children, who huddled together, eyes wide with terror. But when she turned back to confront the man, he was gone. A chilling silence enveloped the room. The air hung heavy, pregnant with dread. Linda stood frozen, the world around swirling in silence, confusion and terror gripping her heart. "Get behind the bed," she hissed at Sarah and Tommy, her voice barely a whisper. She needed to figure out what was happening, where he had gone. Just then, a rustle came from the hallway. The door swung shut with a slam that reverberated through the walls. Linda's stomach dropped. Had he left, or was he already inside? Before she could collect her thoughts, a laugh echoed from the depths of the house. It was deep and unsettling, filled with malice that echoed against the walls, chilling her blood. No, he wasn't. He finished. Linda took a deep breath, forcing down the rising tide of panic. She would find him, whatever it took. But as she peered down the darkened hallway, shadows shifted and twisted, leaving her breath hitching in her throat. What if the real danger wasn't he, the man, at all? The children trembled behind her, the faint sound of laughter wafting through the air, chilling her to the core. What had she brought into their lives? Her eyes narrowed as her instincts took over. The hunt was not just to protect them, it was to survive. With dread pooling in her gut, she stepped forth, only to find the hallway utterly empty. But a cold breeze brushed against her neck, prickling her skin. Where had he gone? And what would he do next? The silence was deafening. Linda's heart raced as she clutched the doorframe, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The hallway, once familiar, now loomed like a vast abyss, a chasm of uncertainty that threatened to swallow her whole. Each breath felt weighty, dripping with anxiety as the children's terrified murmurs echoed in her ears. A sudden thud reverberated from behind her, the sound of something heavy falling in the living room. Linda's instincts screamed to flee, but the thought of leaving her children alone paralyzed her. "Stay behind me," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. She stepped cautiously into the hallway, the cool air wrapping around her like icy fingers, drawing her deeper into the uncertainty. With every creak of the floorboards, her mind raced. Had he left a trap? What if he had snuck into the room while she wasn't looking? Mommy Sarah's whimper cut through the stillness, a single plea that ignited a fire of ferocious determination within her. "I'm right here," she reassured, forcing a smile despite the racing terror clenched tightly in her chest. She rounded the corner and paused. The living room was dark, the shadows thickening, making it difficult to see. Linda held her breath, straining to hear any sign of movement. Just then, she caught a glimpse of something fluttering, a curtain swaying, as though stirred by unseen hands. Linda narrowed her gaze. "Hello?" Her voice quivered but held a firmness she desperately tried to maintain. "Show yourself." As if on cue, a soft, raspy chuckle echoed from the depths of the house. Goosebumps prickled her skin. It was almost playful, like an invitation laced with menace, drawing her closer to the unknown. She forced herself to take a step forward, the floor creaking beneath her weight. Suddenly, Tommy's small voice broke out from the bedroom. "Mommy!" Yes, in here. Panic coursed through her veins, and she bolted toward the noise, dread spiking with each hurried step. Stay there, she shouted, rushing back. Tension coiled tightly as she pushed open the bedroom door. Her heart sank. The room was empty, an unsettling quiet coating the air like a heavy fog. The children had been right there moments earlier, but now nothing. She stepped further inside, scanning for any signs of their presence. The silence felt oppressive, nearly drowning her thoughts. Sarah? Tommy? She called, her voice trembling. She stepped nearer to the window, her mind racing with awful images. Just then, laughter erupted from behind her, a high-pitched giggle laced with malevolence. Linda spun around, and there he was. The figure stood just outside the door, his eyes gleaming with vindictive delight. Let us play hide and seek, he taunted, his smile stretching impossibly wide. Before she could react, he was gone in a blink, a puff of darkness curling into the corners of the room. A wave of nausea swept over her. Somehow it felt wrong, like he fed off their fear. It was a game to him. Mommy, came Tommy's voice again, this time muffled, as if he was being pulled away by something unseen. Tommy, Linda shrieked, her fear morphing into an urgent hunt. She dashed down the hallway, each step pounding like a drum in her ears. As she reached the stairs, a deep growl emanated from below, sending an electric jolt of fear coursing through her. The shadows grew deeper as she peered down. Get back here, she yelled, now fueled by a sense of desperation. The familiar warmth of home had turned into a labyrinth of horrors. Suddenly, she heard the frail sound of a child's sob. Was it Sarah? I'm coming, she cried, plunging into the darkness, feeling her heart racing harder with each step. But as she reached the bottom, the air thickened, the previous laughter echoing more sinister than before. Where were her children, and what had she really invited into their lives? The walls seemed to close in as she realized this was just the beginning. Linda's pulse thundered as she descended into the suffocating darkness. Each step felt like wading through thick mud, the shadows wrapping around her with an urgency that breathed life into her panic. In the back of her mind, the playful laughter twisted into something grotesque, a mocking reminder that she was utterly alone in her fight. Mommy! The cry was sharper this time. It echoed off the walls, a piercing plea. She sprinted toward the sound, praying it was Sarah, that she would find her little girl clutching a corner of the wall, wide-eyed and pleading for help. There it was again, another muffled cry, more desperate now, followed by an echoing sob that bounced like a ball tossed between the darkened corners of the house. But the laughter returned, clearer this time and close enough to feel it swirling around her. Mommy! Tommy's voice cracked, dripping with terror. Tommy, where are you? She yelled, her own voice feeling weak against the monstrous silence clutching back. The air grew fetid, a stale scent of rot and musk creeping up her nostrils. She gagged and pressed forward, desperately fighting the urge to retreat. What was she even running toward? The weight of her children's absence pressed like a vice around her heart. Help us! The voice fluttered, fragile and broken, and Linda's breath caught in her throat as she found herself at the threshold of a once light-filled family room. The curtains fluttered again, but this time they weren't shaking with the wind, they were beckoning her deeper, deeper into the maw of the shadows. She hesitated but took a step further inside. The room was too quiet now. Instead of laughter or whimpering, there was only the heavy breathing of anticipation. She searched around frantically, looking for any sign of her children. Then she saw it, a flash beneath the sofa, something pale and small. Tommy! She screeched, lunging forward, heart racing like a wild stallion. But as she reached for him, he vanished, dissolved into nothingness with a choked giggle, leaving her gripping nothing but inch-thick dust. Why are you playing this game? She screamed, her voice cracking, looking around for anything she could cling to, any clue of what the dark figure wanted. A voice echoed back from the corners of the room, dripping with malice. Because it's so much fun when they think they're safe. Linda fell back, scrambling against the wall, her heart racing, the disbelief fracturing her sense of reality. The familiar space became a nightmare. She could feel the walls pressing in, the house breathing in tandem with her fear. "Stop!" she shouted, feeling weak and small. Despair washed over her. But in that moment, she could hear them soft, sobbing breaths coming from the utility closet. They were there. She could feel her children's presence. Taking a deep breath, Linda rushed toward the door, determined to break the spell that held her family captive. The handle felt cold against her palm, a shock against her frantic warmth. She turned it, flinging the door wide open, and a gust of icy air rushed out, stinging her face. Empty shelves greeted her, the darkness yawning like a ferocious beast. Just then, the growling returned, deeper now, closer, as if the very house itself was exhaling its displeasure. The laughter cascaded around her like a symphony of horror. "Mommy," came a faint whisper from within. Linda shook her head, fear clawing at her sanity. "No, I'm not leaving without you," she cried, stepping into the closet, feeling the chill swallow her whole. Then the door slammed shut behind her, plunging her into a pitch-black silence where she could only hear her own ragged breaths. Was this the end? What horror lay before her, hidden within the engulfing shadows? She held her breath, waiting for answers in the dark. Linda's lungs burned in the frigid air, the weight of terror gripping her like an iron shackle. The silence stretched impossibly long inside the closet, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Each heartbeat echoed in the murkiness, a frantic reminder that time was slipping away. "Tommy? Sarah?" she whispered, her voice trembling. No response came, just the oppressive quiet, as if the very house was holding its breath. She pressed her back against the cold wall, willing her senses to decipher any sound, any sign that her children were with her. Suddenly, a soft rustle broke the stillness. It was too faint, too subtle to be her imagination. The sound felt wrong, unnatural, as if something was moving just outside her reach. Linda strained to hear, fear coiling tightly in her gut. "Mommy, come play." The words slithered into her ears, chilling her to the bone. It wasn't Tommy or Sarah. It was a voice that twisted her insides, uncoiling nightmares that hung at the edges of her memories. It was the same sing-song laughter that had been haunting her since she entered this cursed house. "No, you're lying," she shouted, her voice snapping like a thread in the dark. "Get away from them." The closet was thick with cold, and the shadows seemed to pulse, breathing in rhythm with her panic. Linda's heart was pounding a frantic tattoo against her ribcage, and an instinct to flee surged through her. She fumbled for the doorknob, desperate to escape the confined space. But it wouldn't budge. "Let me out," she cried, shaking the handle, but it felt unnaturally solid against her frantic grip. An ominous giggle echoed in response, sprightly and sinister, making her skin crawl. The laughter bounced off the walls, growing louder, mingling with the rustling sound something else was in here with her. "Mommy," the whisper had changed, now gurgled, as though it were fighting through the choking darkness. Linda pressed her forehead against the door, hoping against hope that it might somehow open. She pictured her children, frightened and helpless. But the thought of their innocent faces brought a fresh wave of horror as the laughter morphed into a chorus of distorted voices, echoing endlessly, taunting her resolve. "Join us, Mommy." The shadows clawed towards her, familiar fingers of fear that brushed against her legs. Linda recoiled, her breath hitching. The sensation of the cold, clammy fingers crawling up her ankles ground her hope to dust. "Get back," she shouted, recalling the dreams of sinister figures lurking in the dark as a child. The ghosts of her past were deep-seated fears now manifesting into this living nightmare. The voices escalated, swirling into a tempest around her. Desperation seized her. She began to pound on the door with all the strength she could muster. "Let me out, please." And just then, the voices fell silent. Linda stopped, breathless and sweating. The absence of sound throbbed in her ears. She felt something shift in the air, and a wave of raw, biting cold washed over her. The door creaked open, revealing a thin sliver of light. It was like sunlight piercing the darkest cave. But instead of letting relief flood her, a bone-deep fear warned her of the lurking danger. "Step out, Mommy." She hesitated, the words thick with malice. What awaited her beyond the door? And were her children still alive? Or had she just walked into a trap laid by a darkness far older than herself? As the whisper beckoned again, Linda summoned her last ounces of courage and took a tentative step forward. The door creaked wider, the light spilling into the dark closet like blood on a snow-white sheet. Linda felt icy tendrils of fear wrapping tighter around her heart. The air outside was thick with an unsettling stillness, radiating an intelligence that unnerved her more than the shadows behind her. "Mommy." The sinister voice was now nearer, almost a whisper against her ear, but with the pitch of a child. She staggered back, overwhelmed by the need to retreat, to press herself further into the closet's trembling walls. But the door's threshold beckoned her. The unknown loomed with a sharp edge that dared her to step into its embrace. She gathered herself, took a breath that felt like shards of glass in her throat, and stepped out. The hallway was empty, save for a flickering light at the end, swaying as if in time with an unseen rhythm. The wallpaper peeled off in ragged flakes, revealing ominous eyes that watched her from the faded wood beneath. Muffled giggles flitted through the gloom, coiling around her thoughts and pulling her deeper into dread. "Tommy." "Sarah," she called, each syllable trembling and thin. The laughter ceased, replaced by silence that pressed down on her, squeezing her heart like a vice. Was it her imagination, or had she heard a faint whimper echoing through the air? Linda hesitated. With every step, the floor creaked underfoot, resonating like a heart beating in the dark. She glanced over her shoulder. The closet door stood ajar, whispering secrets she dared not heed. "Mommy, come find us." The voice was louder now, teasing yet tinged with something darker. It felt like a thread weaving through her mind, pulling her toward the living room. Her legs moved almost of their own accord, drawn by a force she couldn't understand. Each room she passed was a graveyard of shadows. The furniture sat still and watchful, mannequins frozen in fear as she stepped into the deeper recesses of the house. A gnawing dread wormed its way into her stomach, each pulse demanding she turn back. "Find us," came the sing-song chant, echoing from beneath the floorboards. The hairs on her neck bristled. Were they really close? Or was this a cruel trick? Linda felt bile rise in her throat. She had to know. If her children were trapped, she had to save them. She moved toward the living room. The light flickered again, then burst into darkness. Panic flared within her, and she slammed her palm against the wall, searching for reassurance in the cool plaster. "No, Tommy." "Sarah." A small hand grabbed hers from the shadows. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. "Let us play hide and seek." Linda swung around to face the figure. It was a child, but the wrong kind of child. Its eyes glowed an unearthly hue, devoid of warmth, filled instead with black pools of malice. She recognized the thin frame, the faded clothes. "Sarah?" Terror gripped her heart as the child, impossibly still, offered a twisted smile. "You're it, Mommy. Come find us." Before she could react, the figure darted away, disappearing down a dark hallway. "No, come back," she screamed, lunging after her. The chase was swift, each step echoing like thunder against the oppressive silence. Then she halted, breath caught in her throat, as she turned the corner. The house was alive again. Shapes darted, the flickering lights revealed shadows stretching and bending. Were they playing? Her heart raced. She had to face them. But what dark truth lay hidden behind their laughter? "Help us." The word hung in the air like a knife thrown in the dark. Linda's mind swirled with a need to save them. But as she stepped forward, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. With a sinking feeling, she realized she was standing at the mouth of an impossibly large mouth. The walls curled into an abyss, beckoning her with a whisper that chilled her blood. Join us. Would she plunge into the depths to save her children, or would she become part of this nightmare too? The laughter bubbled ominously around her as she took another step, her resolve trembling like leaves in a biting wind. Little did she know the true game had only just begun. The ground trembled beneath her as Linda stared into the abyss, a gaping mouth that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her own racing heart. The invitation whispered through the darkness wrapped around her, seductive and horrifying all at once. She felt sweat trickle down her spine, cold and clammy, as she teetered on the brink of a decision that could seal her fate. "Mommy!" It boomed from somewhere deep within the maw, rhythmic like a heartbeat yet echoing with a dissonance that made her skin crawl. It mingled with the chorus of giggles, now a haunting symphony that drew her closer. Linda's knees quaked as she stepped back, ready to turn away, but something stalwart clutched at her resolve. Those giggles belonged to Tommy and Sarah. They couldn't truly be lost. She instinctively took a step closer, the darkness pulling her in like a lover's embrace. Was she really going to rescue them? Or was it a trap, a dire game woven by a malevolent force? Her pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the laughter that echoed off the walls. "Don't be scared." Sarah's voice rang out again, laughing and yet somehow sad. "We're waiting for you. Join us, it's fun." There was a sweetness that twisted her insides, each word coated in sorrow, a sound that felt utterly wrong as it lingered in the air, heavy with dread. "No," Linda gasped, shaking her head, trying to break free from the entrapment of those voices. She turned away, desperately seeking the way back to the safety of the light-dimmed hallway. Each step felt like moving through a swamp, the weight of gloom pressing against her chest. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, casting a harsh glow over the disarray of the living room. Shadows darted across the walls, scrambling away like startled mice. She froze, scanning the room for any sign of her children. "Tommy, Sarah." The house seemed to sigh, the air thick with anticipation. Then the walls trembled, creaking as if sharing a secret. She strained her ears, listening for the faintest whisper, but silence swirled around her, instead a quiet punctuated only by the sound of her own breath. "Mommy," a fresh voice, one that resonated with innocence but carried the echo of something darker. It slithered up like icy fingers wrapping around her throat. Linda spun towards the source, her heart pounding wildly. There, just at the edge of the kitchen, barely illuminated, shrouded in shadows, stood a figure. The outline was small, just a child, but as her heart raced, she could feel a deep chill creeping down her spine. "Mommy, we shouldn't play alone," the child whispered, tilting its head in an unnatural angle, something almost predatory sparkling in its eyes. "Who are you?" she asked shakily. Panic bubbled in her throat. The figure giggled, a tinkling laugh that sent shivers down her spine, and stepped forward. Linda noticed its features shifting, distorting as if reality struggled to hold them in place. "Come join the game," it beckoned, fingers outstretched, elongating into claw-like appendages. The eye sockets deepened, and the mouth stretched wider, revealing a line of jagged teeth glittering in the light. "Tommy, Sarah," she screamed, but her voice felt weak in the face of this nightmarish creature. In that ominous moment, an overwhelming realization washed over her. This was no game. Desperation clawed at her, a paralyzing need to escape. She had to find her children before the house, this living nightmare, swallowed them whole. With a sudden burst of clarity, Linda turned and ran back toward the hallway. She needed a plan. She needed to confront whatever darkness resided in the depths of this house. But just as she reached the first step, the laughter erupted again behind her, a cacophony that rose to a deafening crescendo, curled around her like smoke, wrapping tighter, suffocating her will. "Join us, play with us forever." She hesitated only for a moment. What awaited her beyond the shadows? What sinister truth had plunged her family into this horror? Linda would find out soon enough. As she launched into the darkness, a chilling thought gripped her. What if the real game was one she couldn't win? The hallway stretched before her, an unending tunnel of shadows that felt alive, pulsing in sync with her racing heart. Each step was a battle, her feet reluctant to move forward despite the sheer terror behind her. The laughter, that dreadful mirth, surged again, echoing through the corridor. It was as if the house itself was alive, roaring with delight at her fear. "Tommy, Sarah," she cried, desperation carving her voice into an echo of its former strength. The walls appeared to waver, shimmer, as Linda pressed on. She could almost see faces in the plaster, twisted and contorted in malicious glee. Every footfall scraped against the ground, and she could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon her, watching her every move. Her breath quickened, and heat rushed to her cheeks from a potent mix of terror and fury. Rounding a corner, Linda collided with a door, thick and heavy. The wood felt cold and unyielding against her skin. She yanked it open, plunging into a dark room that smelled of damp earth and decay. The door slammed shut behind her, a resounding thud that sent shivers down her spine. "Where are you?" she shouted, hoping against hope for an answer. Silence. Then, a low giggle lingered in the corners, swirling around her. It was not the innocent giggling of her children, but something twisted, grotesque. She fumbled for the light switch, her fingers trembling so violently they slipped. Panic surged as darkness wrapped around her like a thick fog. Was she really losing the fight? The childish laughter grew louder, shriller, displacing all hope of finding her kids. Maybe they're here? Maybe, she whispered to herself, even as logic slipped through her fingers like sand. Suddenly, a pale light flickered, illuminating the room just enough to reveal what lay within. Dusty old toys littered the floor to form teddy bears, dismembered dolls, and shattered board games. It was a graveyard of childhood relics, and among them stood a shadow, a figure at the corner that watched her with hollow eyes. "Mommy?" the shadow wheezed, its voice like jagged glass. Linda's heart plummeted. It sounded like Tommy. "Tommy, where are you? It's dark, so dark, come and play," the voice urged, weaving through the air like smoke. The shadow grew nearer, creeping along the wall. Confusion swirled in her mind. She could almost touch the familiar outline, but it was wrong. Its form flickered and writhed, a vile imitation of what she longed to hold. "No," she muttered, stepping back, her back hitting the wall. "No, this isn't you." The figure lunged forward, laughter spilling into the room, sharp and jagged, cutting into her resolve. "You promised, Mommy, remember?" It echoed, each word tainted with a taunting note. "Stop," she yelled, heart thundering, fists clenched. "Get away from me." As if to respond to her agony, the room quaked, shifting like a living entity. Toys rose into the air, spinning wildly before crashing to the ground, an absurd ballet of chaos. Linda's senses hammered against her skull, screaming for her to escape. Just as she turned to flee, a chilling hand grasped her arm. She recoiled, eyes wide with terror. It was small, cold, and grasping like a vice, anchoring her in place. "Play with us forever," came a chorus from around her, a dozen voices entwined in sinister harmony. The lights flickered and died, plunging her into suffocating darkness once more. Every hair on her body stood on end as the nightmare erupted around her. She screamed, not for her children, but for any salvation, any escape from the clutches of the abyss that had ensnared her. But just before she screamed again, a new wave of laughter washed over her, revealing a secret buried deeper than she knew. What if the shadows whispered the truth? What if the game had only just begun? Linda gasped as the overwhelming cold threatened to claim her completely. Darkness pressed in on all sides, but something inside her flickered, an ember she wouldn't allow to go out. With a snarl, she blinked hard and willed her feet to move. "Enough!" she shouted, shaking off the grip of darkness as if it were a shroud. "I will find my children." The words echoed off the walls, filled with a fierceness she didn't wholly feel, but the moment demanded it. Each syllable felt like a barrier against the oppressive weight of the shadows surrounding her. The shadows recoiled slightly, shrinking back as if listening. The moment gave her just enough strength to surge forward. Each pulse of adrenaline cleared her mind, sharpening her instincts. She recalled the sounds of her children as they laughed, tickling her heart from the clutches of despair. "Tommy, Sarah," she yelled again, her voice slicing through the dread. She could almost see the flickering reflections of her kids in her mind's eye, their warm smiles sparkling like stars against the encroaching night. And suddenly, from up ahead, She heard it. That soft whimper, followed by the unmistakable giggle that trailed into the dark like a flame dancing in the wind. It was real. It had to be. With newfound determination, Linda rushed towards the sound. The weight of the house felt lighter, as if it knew her resolve had shifted, almost like the very walls wanted to help her reclaim what was rightfully hers. Shadows scurried and distorted as she ran through them, but she didn't falter in an instant. She found herself back in the living room, where all traces of dread seemed to converge. It was chilly, but the flickering lights returned, illuminating corners that held creatures trapped in the very fibers of the house. They writhed, each held captive by the darkness, grinning in a way that pinched her sanity. "Help!" came a voice, familiar and soft. Linda's chest tightened. It was Tommy. Spinning around, she locked eyes with a dark figure crouched by the broken toys. It flickered, morphing between child and shadow, enticing her with its boyish grin. "Come and play," it beckoned, though it did not sound like her son. "Where is Tommy?" she demanded, her voice trembling but firm. She stepped closer, sensing the bloated energy emanating from it, sensing the playfulness laced with malice. "Right here," the figure purred, and in a flash, the shadows parted. Linda could see him, her Tommy huddled against the wall, surrounded by dark tendrils that clutched at him like hungry vines. "Mommy!" he cried, tears streaming down his face. With a primal roar, Linda lunged forward, desperation shoving her through the swirling darkness. "Get away from him!" she yelled, hands pulling at the creeping shadows like they were thick molasses, and she poured every ounce of motherly strength into it. Fingers clawed at her, whispers swirled and pierced her psyche, but she couldn't yield. "Not now." The shadows hissed angrily, but sensing her unwavered will, they shrank, recoiling into a pitiful wail as sunlight broke through the heavy curtain's light so bright it seared through the darkness. Igniting hope, Linda slammed her palms together and with a deep, releasing breath, she shouted, "Your grip is broken. You have no power here." The shadows shrieked, retreating from her, countless whispers dissolving into echoes of fear. In a haze of shifting darkness, she reached for Tommy and yanked him forward, pulling him to her chest. He melted against her, body trembling, breaths desperate and shallow. "Mommy, you found me!" he sobbed, relief flooding his words. From the corner of her eye, something shifted. Sarah emerged, standing frozen, but for the first time, her face was lit not by shadows but the dawn of light. "Mommy, are we safe?" "Yes, my loves, yes." Linda gripped both of them, heart pounding in a rhythmic beat against her ribs. In a moment of joyful clarity, they turned towards the door. The sinister laughter echoed one last time, now distant, resigned to the recesses of the night. Hand in hand, they dashed from the house. As the door closed behind them, the shadows tried to cling but melted against the brightening horizon that welcomed them back to life. They stumbled onto the yard, met by the soft glow of dawn. Breaths came easier now, the cool morning air filled with promise. They were free. "Let's go home," Linda whispered, turning to her children, their faces brightening as sunlight washed away the last remnants of fear. The shadows had lost. Family held their ground as they walked back to the safety of their newfound home. Linda felt a warmth radiate from within. She realized that even in her darkest hour, she had found her strength. A reminder that sometimes, the fiercest battles reveal the deepest love, but every tale of shadows leaves remnants. So, before the memories could corner again, she vowed to protect her family, to shield them from any lurking darkness, and to teach them how to stand against it together. The sun rose ever higher, banishing demons born not of nightmares but fears. And as they stepped into their new life, Linda glanced back once more, a sense of peace wrapping around her heart. They had faced darkness and emerged. Now they would thrive. Now, dear friends, if you enjoyed this spine-tingling conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that send chills down your spine. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm, because it seriously helps the channel grow. And don't forget to flood that comments section with your thoughts and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Most importantly, don't wait even one more second, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything, and only true fans understand the power of sparking these connections. Let us spread the love and keep the stories coming.